Hello everyone. Welcome to another learning session of Foundation of Programming at CodeMode, where you learn by practice. Currently you are learning about latest in technology, and in today's class we will learn about storing and processing of big data. Before I start, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, especially if you are watching on YouTube. For complete course and practice, go to our platform my.codemode.us. Let's begin. As big data is growing rapidly on all fronts, in terms of the variety, the volume, and velocity, we need to store the data and then we need to process the data. So remember these two words, storage of data and processing of the data. Now, because the data is growing so fast, we need to find ways to store effectively and also process effectively. And no wonder, if you remember, we talked about it in the cloud computing, that cloud is a fancy word for a lot of computers owned by some company over the internet. Now, as data is growing in the cloud or in that network, we can add more computers or more storage to store the data. For any company, the company can still add more computers, but nowadays, since another company is good at storing the data and processing the data, companies are using that service like Amazon or Google or Microsoft to store their data on their servers over the internet. Now, as demand increases, we can add more servers, we can rent more servers, and as demand decreases, we can reduce the servers. And we already learned that in the cloud computing part. Now, what is important is now that we have data, what do we want to do with the data? We have to find useful information out of it. In order to do that, we have to process the data. Now, for one computer, it is very hard to load all the data, store all the data, load all the data, and process all the data. Scientists have come up with a way to divide and conquer. What I mean is that you can take one task. Suppose we have to find a pattern in the data. We can divide the data and the task in smaller pieces and give it to one computer. So think of this like a cluster of computers in which we assign tasks. Suppose there are 9 computers in this network. We assign one task to this computer, which will take a part of the data and one small task. Similarly, second computer will take part of the data and a small task. And the output of this, it may become the input to next computer, or it may come directly to the parent, computer. And finally, this central computer will divide the task, divide the data, and ultimately get all the results and stitch together to give us the final result. This whole idea of divide and conquer is becoming very popular nowadays, thanks to the growing, the size of data, what we refer as big data. And it's easy to understand if you think in terms of honeybees. In the honeycomb, the queen bee manages all the worker bees, and she divides the roles and responsibilities. She gives the tasks to worker bees, and they go and do all the tasks, and honeybee manages every one of them. Similarly, in this network, the worker computers do all the work, whereas the queen computer, manages the job of other computers and get the output from them and stitch together to get the final result. Now that we understand how do we process the data and store the data, store big data, let's understand what really happens in the real world. Okay. Now, in the real world, we always start with a question. What do we want to find in the data? That's very important. If our question is to find in 2025, what will be the home prices in Atlanta? That's the question we want to find out. You always start with a question, and then you find what the relevant data, which data will help me get this answer. Then you go and acquire the data, get the data wherever it is. It could be the historic housing prices, type of houses, all the useful data that will help us get the answer. Then finally you clean the data. Data does not always come the way you want it. Sometimes the data is a string, you have to convert to a number because you're going to do the processing as a number. Those type of cleaning is required. Sometimes data is together combined, you want to split it into pieces and you are only interested in the right part of the data or left part of the data. It's like you have the full name, you want to split and get only the first name but not the last name. That all part of the cleaning of the data. And then you start analyzing your data. And then finally, once you get your result, you present the data. So a data analysis at a high level, this applies to any data analysis, but in general, when you're dealing with big data, you have kind of a typical life cycle in which you have predefined steps: asking a question, finding the data, getting the data, cleaning the data, analyzing, and finally presenting the data. And it is easy to understand. Again, if we go back to our analogy of Lego blocks, think of that: you have tons of boxes full of Lego blocks, right? And you want to ask, okay, what do you want to build? That's your first question, because then everything else changes. If you want to build a car, then you are going to look for the pieces that's useful for the car. So you want to go and find useful pieces, put it maybe in a bucket here. You have tons of Lego block boxes. From there you go and put your useful pieces into your bucket. That's what we call it, finding the right data. And for that, where to go and find it, in which boxes you have. Once you identify the pieces you need, you go and find from these boxes and put it here. And then you may still need to do some cleanup. You may not have picked the right Lego block. In some cases you go and replace it with a different color and all of that part. And then finally you put all these pieces together to make your car, and finally present the car to the end user and say, hey, this is the car you wanted to build it. So that's how it is in real life too. I hope it makes sense. Go ahead and solve the quiz associated with this concept. It will help you practice, but also it will test your knowledge and understanding. If you have any question, feel free to post it in the community on my.codemode.us. I'll see you guys all in the next class. Keep learning.